Yeah, I think you're getting at something which was central to the idea of the design, and something that we were really pursuing, which was what is a library now really about? It used to be that libraries were hermetically sealed boxes, repositories for books. That's no longer the case anymore. The physical book, while it's still with us and hopefully will be for some time, it matters less than it used to. And the idea that libraries are here to protect books is far away from us. So really, libraries become in this new environment social spaces. They're extensions of the community, of public space. They're really places for community gathering as much as they are about places for books.
When I think of libraries, I mean, there's lots of different types. When I think of them myself, I'm thinking primarily about public libraries and the role that they play in community spaces. So, I mean, I think my definition is really colored by my experience and what I've been doing in my career. And I really take the cue from what I see happening in the building. So for me, a library is a space where someone can go to access the information they need to pursue their goals. So information can be like skill development, it might be programs, a book, the internet, it might be communication tools, like being able to Zoom with someone at a computer at their library, and with as few barriers as possible. So just kind of giving everybody that opportunity to get what they need to achieve their own goals.
I guess this is kind of like a weird question in a way, but why does the library focus on building community so much?
I don't think that's a weird question. It's interesting to me to think about it because I think we focus actually on library services, and as a result, people connect. Does that make sense? So we want to be a space where people can come and engage with ideas. And often the best way to engage with an idea is talking with another person. So that might be through a book club or attending a speaker series, but we're always looking for ways to foster connections, between and amongst people. And I think because we're so focused on information provision and access to items, that connection piece it naturally burbles to the top. That's what we want to do. And even if I call back to what I said earlier, what makes the library a welcoming space, it's staff, right? It's the fostering of that environment, but it's also, you can sit next to someone you've never met before and you won't see them again, but you're both kind of using the same facility to drive forward whatever it is you have going on in your life. And I think there's beauty in that. It's a place where you can come and just be and work towards what you want. Read a book, attend a story time, and you're there with other people that are doing the same thing. And I think that just builds community right off the bat.
We tried to design something that was flexible to let itself adapt to what a library could become over time. The question we asked ourselves was, when we designed this, what would a library be without books? And, that's not the case yet. There are still books, but we want to make sure that as these kind of buildings transitioned away from being about books and towards being community spaces, that the building was contributing to that, or allowing that to happen in a way that was not at odds with the building. And so when I talk about this open span structure, this allows the whole building to be reconfigured over time as the library changes.
Could you kind of define what a third space is and how a library is a third space?
Sure. Well, to my understanding, a third space is somewhere where you can go that's like not your home, it's not your workspace, it's a place that you can go and be. And that I'm kind of pulling that from the recesses of my memory, so I might not be 100% right. But when I think about it, I think you can read lots about how, libraries are like living rooms in the community. So you can come and be here and just exist, right? You don't really need to have a purpose to be here. If you're following our code of conduct and you want to be at a library, we welcome you to be here. The only parameters we have, of course, are around, our opening hours and our closing hours. Like those are the sorts of things. But we have many customers who will come for opening and leave at close. And the purpose of that is a warm and welcoming space that you can use for what you need it for. And so to come here and just be and read a book or play a board game or attend a program, it's a space to be and engage with community that there's really no cost to access.
Mhm. That makes sense. And I think that does come off that way. A nice, welcoming, warm space. It's
It's
good.
the goal.
Yeah. What about the space do you think achieves that sort of welcoming environment?
Well, I think probably the number one way that we go about it is by making sure staff know how to do that, right? So it's the in-person connections that customers make as they come in. And so we have just a wonderful staff team at all of our branches who have really committed themselves to providing that. They build relationships. We have a community-led service philosophy. It's really important to us that customers come in and they receive the same, consistent, excellent experience when they're in our spaces. I think there's other parts of that too. There's also like making sure that we're offering programs and services, so you're feeling welcome when you go into somewhere and you can just easily find what you're looking for. So that ease of access, which is often facilitated by a staff person, but not always. And then I think there's also an element of design. So we have furniture that is comfortable to sit on. We have accessible spaces. There's elevators where you need them. There's thought put into the art and the colors, the wayfinding, the signage that we use is all intentionally meant to create a space that invites people to come in and spend time here.
Yeah, I think that there was a previous library on the site that was built in the early '60s, I believe. It had been changed so many times over its life that not only was it kind of struggling structurally, but it wasn't necessarily the kind of inviting place that the Edmonton Public Library, aspired for their branches to be. And so we were really following the ambition of the Edmonton Public Library to make a very welcoming and inclusive kind of space that the community could go to access information.
And I feel like, especially nowadays with how much everything is moving online, it's a lot harder to have that sort of community connection and like see other people, other strangers, and be comfortable in that space and like be comfortable to talk to them. But it's nice that within a library, you can still feel that way. And if you need to just talk to a person, you can always, or like feel that you're around people, you can always do that.
Yeah.
Did you have any personal memories or reflections about your own experiences within libraries when you were creating this one?
I grew up in Edmonton, and I do recall always going to the libraries with my family and the kind of sense of exploration that you had in them. You know, Edmonton has had a few kind of very interesting libraries in the past. You know, I recall that the basement of the Stanley A. Milner Library, then it was called the Centennial Library. The children's library was in the basement, which isn't great, but it had some quirky things about it. It had a petting zoo and animals. When you walked in, you walked past an iguana, and there was a goose. And then, you know, they had a lot of these strange sculptures made out of painted insulation. And it was probably a reflection of the priorities of the library changing over time, that, you know, this was in the basement and that they had to introduce these kinds of amenities or quirky additions in order to kind of give it its character. You know, that's definitely a little bit different than what we're doing
Right.
here, where I think we're trying to accommodate different kinds of users, you know, whether it's, you know, the reference users or the kids' libraries or the people just picking up holds and zooming in and out. We're trying to, in some ways, mix that all together.
So we have to stay interesting to someone from birth to retirement. So I'm hoping that folks get their first library card when they're like days old. That's like the dream. You come in and we start building that relationship with you. So what our job is to make sure that we continue to stay relevant to you through all stages of your life. And so that's when you're a kid. As you grow up, your information needs change over time. And that's because you are developing as a person, but also because the community around you is changing. Technology is changing. Information is moving quickly. And so you have to be nimble. You know, we're over 100 years old as an organization. And so if you look at EPL in its first year and EPL now, it's not going to look the same. And that's our job, to make sure that we're continuing to respond to, you know, community changes, but also staying relevant to like individuals' lives. So that relationship is really important, and building it over time. And so making sure we're relevant to you, even if our building has changed, is really important. It maintains that relationship.
I know we've come here to talk about a specific project of yours, the Jasper Place branch of the Edmonton Public Library. Could you tell us like when you created it and how you got into that project?
Sure. Yeah, the Jasper Place Library. It opened actually about 12 years ago now, so it's not necessarily new, but it's one that still is close to my heart anyway. It was one of the first projects that I worked on for in depth, and so in that way, I think it represents a time in my life, but also it's a very complex and unique kind of building, a library. And so we started working on it in 2009, and it opened in 2013. And we were working for both the city of Edmonton and the Edmonton Public Library in tandem. And that was quite unique to have kind of two clients that were interested in different components of the project, but ultimately wanted, you know, to see something successful. But also they were looking for something very different from what they had done before. There was really an aspiration for something innovative and something unprecedented in the city. And so we were given a lot of room to try experiments and try new things. And I think ultimately we ended up doing that. So we're happy with the result. We designed this to, we hope, last forever as a loved object. You know, our philosophy is if something is loved, it can be made to last forever. And we want this to be a continuing presence in the community. But we recognize that libraries are changing entities, and so that was part of the impetus behind flexibility. We at this particular moment, or when this was built 12 years ago, we don't know where libraries are going. So we want it to be relevant. We want it to stay relevant and adapt as it will likely need to over its life. And in some ways, by making something interesting and charismatic and a joy to be in, we hope that outlasts the kind of functional or technical requirements that a library might have to pursue, decade to decade.
Jasper Place was also like my childhood branch. So I know the branch that they're talking about, the one that came down to put up this new one. And there was, it's a sustainable building. And so some of that required like X percentage of materials to be reused. And there's this like really beautiful part. So if you got to go in through, when you walk in the front door, the program room is to the right, and you'll see this kind of beautiful wood slats, and that goes all the way into the program room. And that's like original wood from the first branch. And so there's this really like special feeling. So if you grew up in that neighborhood and went to story times at the branch, if you bring your little one to the new branch, you're still in the same space. We still have that callback. You're still giving a story time confined by like the same walls, even though they look really different. It's the same materials. So like those materials have seen, thousands of story times, but that ends up being really important to folks because you really identify with your local branch. And what it looked like, and even if it wasn't so pretty, you loved it. It's weird to kind of let it go. By reusing those materials, it's quite meaningful to lots of people.
I recently went there to check it out. I was very curious about it because I had seen photos of it before, but I had never been there in person.
Mm-hmm.
And when I entered it, I found it really cool because it does have elements of like a brutalist architecture in the sense that you can see the concrete and you can see the skeleton of the building, right? But it's also very organic. It has that flow to it, and it has a lot of the decorations are very vibrant colors, and then there are windows all around, so you can actually look outside, and it's a very interesting, like, are you inside? Are you outside? Where are you? Like,
Yeah, that's right.
The Jasper Place space, you can see the concrete and it's very like raw, but everything that was added to it, that's like the bright colors and everything, it makes it a nice welcoming space. But I'm curious about like how you felt working in that space, and like if the architecture ever popped in your mind or anything like that.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, when I think about Jasper Place branch, it doesn't look the same as any other building around it, right? So when you're in that space, I think it was built 2011-ish, somewhere in there. And I think you can kind of see the style of architecture at the time. Like it looks similar to like the AGA downtown, which is like built kind of in and around the same time, right? So you have that big swoopy concrete and the kind of metal playing off of it. But I think something about Jasper Place is it's not that much square footage, but it feels enormous. And it's because you get to look up and you see all of this airy space. But the thing that I think about most, it's like to kind of bring it back to this, it's also like facilitated by people. When you walk into Jasper Place, like you have staff members who are right there. The desk is right there. There's someone kind of inviting you in, where have people circulating throughout the building. So even if you're upstairs, maybe more off the beaten path, or you're on that big staircase that invites people, and like students, there's lots of like kids that kind of like lay out everywhere in that area. You can see everywhere and see how different folks are using the space. And I think that is what creates a welcoming feeling. You go in and you see other people using it and you feel welcome to use it as well.
And in some ways you can see this kind of the kind of crimping of the roof creates these different scale zones within the space. So even though it's one big space, you kind of get the sense that you're in, you can kind of occupy different scales of space within it, and find the space that's kind of right for what you want to be doing.
I love how like playful and creative the space is, and how it allows like the community and the librarians in there to play with the space for what they need and how they intend to use it. And it keeps it exciting for like the people who go there and see the space evolving and changing. And yeah, that's a very cool design.
So really, libraries become in this new environment social spaces. They're extensions of the community, of public space. They're really places for community gathering as much as they are about places for books. So you talked about the kind of exposed concrete, and you're absolutely right. We felt that the in this context, the main character of the library really is the structure. And it's the fact that the structure is an open single span structure that allows for a lot of flexibility in the space and a strong sense of kind of bringing the outside in. So that organic shape that you mentioned, it's a little bit like I'll pick up a picture. This is a model of it here. You can see that the site is kind of triangular, and the building reflects that tapering down in scale. So it's kind of like a funnel. It funnels the outside in. So you mentioned the extensive glazing on the south. You can think of this as building as a collector, not of books, but of sunlight, of the community, and funneling it into this space and into the various smaller spaces within. And the open span structure becomes the kind of expressive element that communicates that it's doing that. I think it became a central driver to the shape of the roof. This is a concrete structure, and what concrete is really good at being is a kind of heat sink. And so in the summertime, it stays cool, and the sun mostly reflects, coming out at a higher angle, reflects off of the roof, and it keeps the space inside at a consistent temperature of the concrete, so that even in the hotter days, it has a cooling presence on the space inside. The opposite is true in the winter, where it warms up and it stays warm. And we designed the glazing facing the south so that in the winter, when the sun is lighter, it comes all the way deeply into that space. And so the overhang at the south, while it shades the harsh summer sun, is really welcoming to that lower winter sun. And the funnel shape that we talked about earlier, it really, you can almost trace the arc of the winter sun as you look out that south face and watch the kind of those few hours of sunlight kind of traced across the sky. It's visible across that whole facade. And then on the second floor, there are outdoor public spaces that extend out past the glazing line of the building, where someone can sit and read a book on a summer's day.
Awesome. And this is something that so there is that outdoor area, and there is a lot of trees around the public library. Do you consider the seasons and how the view would change when you're designing the space itself? Or more so, it's what do you consider when designing that space?
Yeah, I think the question of how the exterior can influence the interior is very interesting, and seasonality. And I think absolutely they were considered. I'll note that, they don't look like much on the model here, but these are actually very grand, mature elm trees.
Yeah.
And we made sure that all those mature trees were retained. So the profile of the plan of the building is really respecting that mature tree canopy. And if you've been in the space, you might realize that when you look out the window, you're looking at these kind of majestic trees. And we're really so pleased that they continue to, be the presence in the community that they are.
I feel like libraries have evolved so much these days. And you mentioned the Stanley A. Milner, and since it was renovated, now there's like maker spaces and opportunities for people to do more than read or more than work at computers. It's like to create things or play around.
Could you talk a bit more about the makerspace of like how it got started, where it's going, how it's being used?
Sure. I mean, I think the makerspace really came about as part of this community-led service philosophy, right? So we have all of this quickly developing technology that's very expensive to access. So that is our role to fit. So these are information and things that we can provide. So digital literacy is one of our strategic goals. And digital literacy is, it's the ability to take in and process information, sort of judge its quality, that level of it, but it's also like the physical access to the thing. So coming in and using a computer, or in terms of the makerspace, coming in and using, one of our studio spaces, or the Cricut machine, or a sewing machine. These are skills that you can develop that really help you to achieve what you want to achieve. When I think about the makerspace, I really do think about digital literacy, and I think about giving free access to things you might not have access to otherwise. Our studio labs, for instance, and music instruments, so you can go in there and record your own music. I think it's used often for podcasts and things like that. Those give people the ability to come together, spend time in the space, achieve their goals, and have someone there to kind of help facilitate. Our makerspace assistants are, they're trained to train. They'll help you understand how to use the items, and then that's a transferable skill for outside of your life as well. It also eliminates barriers to accessing some of these items. So this is expensive equipment. To come in and have access to it is really important. It's not so easy to get it like in your home. So we like to make sure that there's a space for Edmontonians, for our ed community, to come in and use all of those things.
So we have bookshelves inside, but they're all sitting on what's called a raised floor. And so all of the ventilation and the power and the data and the plumbing is all fed from underneath. And so if at a future time, the librarians of the day choose a different configuration, this can all be moved around. And the library really is just an outer shell that allows for different kind of configurations inside. And we were kind of, we did think that, when you go to a library, you might not want to sit in one big room. There are different kind of qualities, different kinds of spaces that might contribute to different kinds of uses, different kinds of work, different kinds of exploration and play. And so there are different smaller areas of gathering and use within the overall open space that you went to, and that offered that flexibility. But that once you step into that space, it offers a variety of smaller experiences and opportunities and atmospheres when you go in. So, you walk in and there's quite a grand scale. But then, as you recede back to the kind of tapered end of it, the whole roofscape brings you down to a more diminutive scale. That's actually the children's library. And so the floor kind of drops in a little bit. There's fun things like a fish tank to look at. And it's got a kind of Alice in Wonderland component to it, where it plays with your sense of scale, but it kind of offers you different kind of experiences too that might suit what you're looking for, whether you're, a student looking to do your homework, or you're just trying to get out of the house and away from your family and have a little bit of a third space, or you're, looking for a job and need a computer to do that.
When it comes to library service, we have a mandate to provide library service, which is, yes, access to books, but it is also, the physical space. A lot of information that folks need to access is online now. So providing access through free Wi-Fi, through access to computers, access to different types of technologies through like our makerspace, things like that. Those are really core to what I think the library is kind of defining as we have different technologies coming up. There's AI, there's all of these things. And what we want to do is really provide access, but also like the skill set.
Another question I have for you is, why should people care about architecture?
I don't think people have any obligation to care about architecture any more than the architecture earns it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that architecture, can do a really good job of working to make their lives better. I don't think the architecture always needs to be the main character of someone's day. It should in some ways be the background. It should be the frame that allows someone to live their day. And maybe some of the best architecture are the buildings that are so neutral and so much of a backdrop that you don't think too much about them because they work so well and you can enjoy your day. Or they serve whatever you're trying to do. But ultimately, I think that architecture can really positively impact the everyday life of a citizen more than they might think about. I should say that even though I think architecture has to earn its keep,
Yeah.
I think it should be given more opportunity to transform the cityscape than sometimes it's given. It should not be seen as window dressing that's added if there's the budget to do it.
Right.
It's so central to how buildings work and how urban spaces work that
Right.
it has to be seen as a central component to that.
And what I hope people think about when they think about the library, what I want them to see is a space where they can come and engage. So that might be with their own interests. So come and engage with materials, the books that you are interested in. I think it's a place that can really help foster connection between folks. And so that might be just like simple conversations with members of our staff. But, we see people meet through the library all the time. You have the same customers coming in and reading the newspaper in the morning, or kids who meet and build connections through our library programming, story times and Sing, Sign, Laugh, and Learn. What I want people to remember is that the library is really here for them. So we exist to serve the community, and we're always looking for ways to up that. And we want people to be excited to come here. I want you to come back and bring a friend. That's what I want people to do with the library.
I want to go back to the library with each season and see how the sunlight goes along with the building.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to see how the environment affects the way I feel inside the space. I feel like that would be a cool experience.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting in some ways. A lot of buildings in Edmonton become brighter, happier places in the winter because the sun reflects off of the ground plane, and you see the ceilings and the roofscapes of these buildings in a way that's so much more bright and intense than during the summer. And so, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but in some buildings, and this is one, I think really, in some ways come to life in winter.
Mm-hmm. And that is quite nice because I feel like the winters are so long in Edmonton.
Yeah,
So-
you need to do everything that you can to make the winter.
Yeah.
I think that architecture has a lot of opportunity in Edmonton. I think there's Edmonton in some ways, it's a very unique city, but in some ways it's got a lot of homogeneity to it. In some ways, it has a practical or a pragmatic outlook that leads to a lot of formulaic buildings that might follow the dollar, or might follow kind of more less design related ideas of what success is. And that's fine, but I think that what that means is that there's a really clear or strong opportunity for buildings that want to step outside that and express themselves differently, and make community buildings very clearly community buildings. And so I find that opportunity, that kind of room to really step outside the norm, a strong motivator in our work, and something that we have a lot of fun thinking about.
Amazing. Thank you.